My name is Rachel Calander. I'm the founder and executive director of Arctic Encounter, and we're so pleased to have you here. Can we please just recognize we had over 125 speakers, rough count, 15 countries, 673 participants in total, and none of this would be possible without the speakers, first off, volunteering their time, and the sponsors supporting this entire effort. So please give them a warm round of applause. I would also like to recognize the speakers specifically. So the speakers, if you spoke at any session or moderated this year, can you please stand for applause? Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much. We have a full program, so we are going to get to it. Please enjoy the evening. I would first like to welcome to the stage for a land acknowledgement, Mr. Aaron Leggett. Aaron is president and chair of the native village of Eklutna. Please welcome him. Thank you.
Yali Ethlandashi she Aaron Leggett Gashtanak she chu chada denainak she Nolchina Ethlan chu Idlarach di Tukta Rick Leggett Shunkta Diane Bowles. Hello everybody. Many of you probably heard me do a land acknowledgement before, but those that haven't, I'm the president of the native village of Eklutna. The native village of Eklutna is the only federally recognized tribe here in the municipality of Anchorage. And I think it's quite fitting to be here at the Dena'ina Civic and Convention Center, named after my people. I know the last 2 days have been quite jam-packed between North by North at the Anchorage Museum, where I also work as the senior curator of Alaska history and indigenous culture, but also here at the Dena'ina Center. And to me, the most important thing has been the gathering of people coming to our traditional homeland, Dena'ina Elfnena, as a representative of the Dena'ina people to here tonight. I just want to welcome everybody. I look forward to even more dialogue, and it's been great seeing everybody that's been able to make it here. So, Chinan Guninu, thank you. You came here, and I will now introduce Marilyn Romano, the Vice President of Alaska Airlines. And I'll be quick. Thanks.
Well, hello, everyone. I hope everyone has had an impactful 2 days like I have, gathered together for the first time at Arctic Encounter since 2019, and gathered in this special place many of us call home. There have been so many incredible discussions and conversations around shared concerns for the Arctic, and at the same time, shared optimism. These conversations are important, and our hope is that they continue long after the end of the evening tonight. One way that happens is with leadership at the highest levels. So many of the topics discussed over the last 2 days are priorities for Senator Lisa Murkowski. Infrastructure needs, accessibility of affordable broadband in rural parts of the state, taking care of the environment to the benefit of all Arctic countries, native and rural priorities, along with tourism, fishing, responsible resource development, job creation, and economic growth. You can find her name attached to legislation and discussions on every one of these. And everything she does, she puts through the lens of what is right and good for Alaska. Here at home, Lisa Murkowski really needs no introduction. Known as Lisa to most of us, she is a third-generation Alaskan, born in Ketchikan and raised in towns across the state, including Wrangell, Juneau, Fairbanks, and Anchorage. She loves spending time in the Alaska outdoors. She's an avid skier, has hiked on glaciers, enjoys fall duck hunts, and has an impressive king salmon mounted on her office wall. In fact, you very seldom see a photo on social media of Lisa that she is not outdoors somewhere in Alaska. Since joining the Senate in 2002, Senator Murkowski has worked tirelessly for Alaskans and earned a reputation for her ability to work collaboratively and across the aisle to reach common sense solutions. Senator Murkowski has long advocated for the Arctic as a national priority and continues to push the United States to invest in the infrastructure and assets critical to supporting an Arctic strategy. A few years ago, when introducing Lisa, and I'm sure she'll remember this, I was going to say she is our senior senator for Alaska, and instead introduced her as our senior citizen. It took a while to recover from that, and Lisa did eventually forgive me. So please join me tonight in welcoming our senior senator for the great state of Alaska, Lisa Murkowski.
Thank you. So extraordinarily great to be back home and to have the Arctic encounter home where it should be. So thank you for being here tonight. So I have had the pleasure and opportunity to have known Rachel Calander for years. In fact, Rachel lived in my basement at one point in time, so I could practically say she was my daughter. Your sons and your daughters come back to your basements. Well, Rachel kind of launched her education in my house back in Washington, D.C. But she and I go back a long ways, and one of the things that I've learned from Rachel is adaptability and flexibility, and schedule that you started with this morning doesn't mean a bit when you get to the end of the day and you've got to rejigger some things. So I'm going to handle a jump ball, and instead of giving you my keynote now, I'm going to jump over that, and I am going to acknowledge an individual that is the recipient this evening of an award that I think only you, Brendan Kelly, and myself have received in years prior at AES, and that is the Friend of the Far North Award. It's actually this beautiful plaque up here that looks like an iceberg or looks like a mountain, whatever you would choose it to be, and it is so only fitting that I'm able to announce this evening one of the recipients of the Friend of the Far North Award, a woman who is a friend of mine, a woman who has led this state for the past 2 years through very difficult and very testing and trying times for all of this. Dr. Ann Zink has been the Chief Medical Officer. Where's Ann? That's a good thing. Everything you do for all of us. So Ann Zink has not only led our state in a way that was driven by science and data and trying to navigate an almost unnavigable field through the COVID-19 pandemic, but she has also led through the heart as an Alaskan. And for that, we can't thank her enough. This has been a challenging time. These past 2 years have been so challenging. Most of us don't think about the year 2020 and the year 2021. It was just those pandemic years. Right, it's a blur. But Dr. Zink was able to provide a calm and a reassuring voice at a time when there was so much uncertainty to all of us. What do we do next? How do we take care of our kids? What do I do with an elderly parent? And she was able to give the best advice and guidance that we could possibly have received in the midst of all the political tumult and all that it was, and how awful it came to be that neighbors were pitted against neighbors in terms of, are you vaxxed or are you not? And do I need to sit at the table with you? And where's your mask? And we had a voice of sanity in Alaska that helped lead us and navigate us through this. I have had occasions to reach out to Dr. Zink, to my friend Ann, texting, how are you doing? How are you handling all this? And we've shared a few moments where it's been challenging on my end in Washington, D.C., and challenging on her end in Alaska. And it was, I don't know, was it a year ago that we last went on our hike? And we both needed it. We both needed a little bit of fresh air. She's a pretty serious hiker, I will tell you. She took me up through some snow that she had the grippers on, and I didn't realize she had the grippers on. She's like, how are you scrambling up this mountain here? I guess I need the right shoes. But we got to the top, and it was kind of interesting because we were talking about how we all get through this together. And I said, we just need to have like a campaign. We're all in this together. And I think we got a little crazy with the altitude or something and said we need to start taking these selfies of all of us just saying, I'm in this together, and jumping up high. We got random hikers who had no idea who we were or why we were taking selfies saying, would you just say we're all in this together? We did. I don't know what we ever did with those. But you know what? You led us through that all. And so I've been asked to recognize you. I know you've got to get home. You've got a schedule that you've got to keep taking care of all of us. But you need to know that my heart has been opened by the compassion of your heart, the generosity, the leadership that you have shown. And I will share just another little personal anecdote. Some years ago, Dr. Zink gave to me a small little necklace that was a little tamping of an Iditarod sled dog. And there was the sled and the team. And she shared that with me as, you gotta have a lead dog. You gotta have somebody leading the team. And Dr. Ann Zink has been our lead dog, so thank you. Okay, we got an opportunity.
Oh, man. I'm speechless, and I have no idea what to say. I was not expecting that at all.
That's why we love it.
But I want to say a couple of things. First of all, thank you so much, Senator. You have been a grounding force, a hiking partner. I was really afraid I was going to have her slip and break her hip, and that wouldn't look so good.
But you'd have to take care of me.
Yeah, I'm the chief medical officer broke the senator's hip, was not going to be a good headline. But we made it through that just fine at that time in that space. And for a lot of the pandemic, we were having weekly calls with the staff, and the ability to work with the federal government, the state government, our tribal partners and local partners made all of the difference in the world. And I'm incredibly appreciative of your staff, of you, of your time to be able to partner with that. But the biggest thing I want to say is thanks to Alaskans. This has been hard and this has been challenging, and many of us have lost loved ones, have been isolated, have lost businesses. But we have come together because we have found ways to be resilient and to be tough and to be able to be problem solvers in ways that have been inspiring and creative. We are still one of the lowest states in the country for cases and deaths per capita throughout this pandemic, with some of the fewest restrictions. And that's because of you all making choices to keep each other healthy and well and safe. And now we have a new challenge of figuring out how can we be a leader, just like this conference, on making Alaskans healthier, and how can we partner with our Arctic partners, who I've been on the phone with a lot during this pandemic, to think about how do we get out, vaccine, and what does testing look like in Canada, in Iceland, in Norway, and how do we partner together in our similarities because we have so much in common. So thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for this award. Thanks.
Good to see you. I'll send you a text. We're planning our next hike, and I promise I'm not going to throw out my hip here. So to Rachel and your team, wow, thank you. Thank you all. What you have pulled together this year, this symposium, is extraordinary, and it's what I expected of you, so thank you for rising to the occasion. You don't want to disappoint me here. But to the sponsors, and there are many of you, Alaska Airlines, front and center certainly, but thank you for your sponsorship for yet another Arctic Encounter Symposium. And I am so happy, Rachel and I have talked about this for years. When are we going to bring it home? When are we going to bring the AES, the Arctic Encounter Symposium, when are we going to bring it home to the state that makes the United States an Arctic nation? And Rachel and team, you have done it, so thank you. It's good to have you home. Welcome home, AES. So I know that there have been great conversations over the past couple days. You look at the agenda, you look at the level of participation, whether it is through Alaskan industries, whether it's through our international partners, the ambassadors that we have, the strategic insights that have been built, these cooperatives that have been built today, is so very important. And I think it's important, it's not only important for the policy considerations, but also for the opportunity to be back together, to be integrated and networking together. Dr. Zink reminds us that COVID, the pandemic, has been a long time. We've been a long time when we have been social distance, when we've been masked, when we are zoomed. We are zoomed to the max. It's like, this is so wonderful to have this level of engagement. And it not only comes at an important time for us, just from the mental health, well-being perspective of just, I want to be social with people, I want to hug, I want to take a selfie, I want to be with you at your table. But it's also important because it comes at a critical time for Alaska and for all of the Arctic. Putin has launched a catastrophic, a deadly war on Ukraine that is really forcing us to rethink every aspect of our cooperation with and our defense against our Western neighbor. And this challenges us in every space. It challenges us to rethink. New opportunities are going to boost our Arctic economy and our standard of living. These are all out on the horizon. We've had some great, successful opportunities recently. My friend Joe Manchin is with us here this evening. We've been talking about the strength of this historic infrastructure law, the progress that we're making with federal appropriations as they relate to the Arctic itself. Looking at the global energy system, I think we recognize that we face a clear need for conventional resources, but the environmental challenges that we face, we know they demand action, and we rise to that. And then, yet in the midst of all this, we face federal governmental decisions that has effectively now, just this past week, used the ring seal to kind of put a ring fence around our share of the Arctic by designating it as critical habitat under the Endangered Species Act. I mean, I can't think of a time when there was more happening in the Arctic, let alone so much of consequence to the Arctic and the world. And that's why this symposium is so important at this time. This symposium has proven to be such a great forum for good ideas that come at just that opportune moment. So I actually looked back over the 7 different Arctic symposiums that I have been fortunate to be a participant of. Actually, I wasn't about fortune. Rachel said, this is the date that we're doing the Arctic encounter, so please make sure it's on your schedule. And I would say, aye, aye, Captain Rachel. But when I think back about some of the matters that were raised at the time, I think I was the first one, and not too often that I'm going to take the credit, but I think I was the very first one who raised the issue of establishing a U.S. consulate in Greenland, and I did it at the Seattle AES. And I raised it, and I thought I was going to get a lot of discussion, and people were like, huh, that's interesting. And look at where we are now. How we were urged. Thanks. So we urged the military services to revisit and develop new strategies for the Arctic. All of them, all of the services have done just exactly that. How it was at the Arctic Encounter Symposium that we pushed for the revival of the Arctic Executive Steering Committee with greater Alaska Native representation, also now a reality. And how many of these symposiums have we talked about icebreakers, the need for polar security cutters? Now we have authorized 6, we have fully funded 2, and we have approved the purchase of long lead materials for number 3. So we are moving on our polar security cutters. And with other infrastructure, we recognized, we identified, we said we have to have a deep water port that is actually in the Arctic. We need a system of deep water ports. We don't need to be 800 miles away from the nearest deep water port. And now we're looking at Port of Nome and $250 million that has been directed specifically to expand the Port of Nome there. So I think it's important, Rachel. I want you to take credit for this. AES has been a place for big ideas to kind of percolate up and then move out and come to fruition, because it influences policymakers, it influences stakeholders, it continues to enhance the domestic dialogue about the Arctic, and that's a good thing because we know we got a lot of work ahead. At the heart of all of that, though, is dialogue. It's not the debate, it's not the contention, it's dialogue. It's open, candid, clear-eyed, wide-ranging dialogue about the future of the Arctic. And Rachel, you shared with me this years ago, we need to get people at the same table, on the same podium, who come from different perspectives. People from the environmental community that are sitting next to pro-mining people and talking about how we find this balance, because it's in this balance that we have a level of sustainability. But it's about dialogue. I once saw a line that said, dialogue leads to connection, which leads to trust, which leads to engagement. And that's exactly what we are talking about here. There are times when our dialogues, whether they're domestic or international, are more than challenged. And there are times when it seems easier not to talk, to just go our separate ways, to kind of put it by the sidelines, go find your own solutions. But what we recognize today through this conference is the value of talking together, not at one another, not to one another, but with one another. Good old-fashioned, in-depth communication. And might I say, I'm looking out at this room, at the hundreds of people here, and I don't see an aisle. I don't see an aisle where the Republicans are on this side and the Democrats on that side. This is a dialogue about our future. And our future means that we come together. We come together as Republicans and Democrats, urban and rural, native and non-native, because we care about the Arctic. We care about our future. We care about our country. We care about the state of our planet. And so thank you. Thank you for what you are doing to contribute positively in all aspects of that. We're going to have an opportunity in just a little bit. We're going to have two dialogues tonight. Both, I think you're going to find incredibly fascinating. The first will be a dialogue with the ambassadors of 5 Arctic nations. And I might point out, maybe you will notice it when we assemble on the stage, but I might point out that it is five female leaders of Arctic ambassador nations. So we will have that conversation, and as you are enjoying your dinner and probably going into your dessert, and I'll have a take-home bag when I go, then I will have an opportunity to bring and invite to the stage my friend, my colleague in the United States Senate, Joe Manchin, from the state of West Virginia. Joe's come a long way. Joe has come a long way to be with us at this event. And he's here for a couple reasons. And he'll say, well, it's because she drugged me here, but not necessarily that. He's here because his eyes have been opened to the prospect and the future of the Arctic. And I think you'll hear from him that that's exciting, even for a West Virginian. But he's also here to demonstrate the value of dialogue and what dialogue constructively can do to bring results that are positive for our states, our country, and truly the broader world. So thanks for the opportunity to be with you. Rachel, you're in charge. What do we do next? Thank you all. Libby Casey, what do we do? All right.
I could never take Rachel's crown, but we're going to move into the next phase of our evening and invite the ambassadors up to the stage. The senator and I will sit down and I'll call you all up. Good evening. My name is Libby Casey. I am a journalist at the Washington Post. I'm a former Alaska-based reporter for public radio in Alaska and for Alaska. Sorry, what's that, Senator? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. If you see the red light lit.
You did a really great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
How many times do I have to tell a reporter she did a really great job?
We'd like to welcome the ambassadors to the stage at this point for this conversation. It's my pleasure to introduce them. Let's start with Ambassador Kirsten Hillman, Ambassador of Canada to the United States. Ambassador, welcome up to the stage. Next up is Ambassador Lone Denker-Visborg, Ambassador of the Kingdom of Denmark to the United States. Welcome, Ambassador. Ambassador Anniken Krutnes, Ambassador of the Royal Norwegian Embassy to the United States. And Ambassador Bergdis Ellertsdottir, Ambassador of Iceland to the United States. It's been an intense 2 days, especially with what everyone's been calling the elephant in the room of Russia looming over the conversation. So I wanted to shift gears for a moment and start on a more perhaps joyful or optimistic note. I'll start with you, Senator Murkowski. Can you point out one of our Arctic neighbors and name one thing you admire about one of the countries and something you'd like to see the United States emulate?
So you hate to pick one Arctic neighbor over another. You're putting me in a hard place, but I do spend a lot of time in Iceland, and I have come to know Iceland as an extraordinary place. And I've commented to others that if I weren't living in Alaska, Iceland would be a place where I would feel pretty comfortable. And the people of Iceland have treated me very, very well. I was actually awarded the Order of the Falcon, which I don't wear a lot of medals, but I have to tell you that is one that was really an extraordinary honor to be able to receive. One of the things that I found absolutely fascinating about Iceland was the people so embrace the outdoors. They are they athletic, they swim in their geothermal heated pools, but they are outdoors all the time. And I learned that young children are encouraged to be outside all the time, which is fine. I was raised that way in Alaska. But babies, infants, as they are in their baby carriers, every day, the moms, the dads would walk their strollers out and about, which is okay, but it's every day. It's rain or snow, it doesn't make any difference. The baby carriages are out, people are walking, but even more exceptional, they're walking, they're enjoying the outdoor and the fresh air, and then they come to a coffee shop, and the moms or the dads go into the coffee shop and they leave the babies outside in the strollers because it is so safe in Iceland that no one will take your child. And they go in and they have mom time in the coffee shop while the babies are lined up like little go-karts outside with nobody attending them. And it struck me as what an extraordinarily healthy place, but how safe as a mother to know that I can feel comfortable leaving my child outside on the street in a baby carriage. So if I could do anything, wow, I'd like to have that kind of freedom in Alaska. Thank you to Iceland.
Yeah. It's a little shocking when you're coming in as an outsider. I took a picture of a sign that said "takeaway" with a bunch of baby carriages, and I called it "Takeaway Baby." I wanted to protect all the babies. It is a unique thing that Scandinavian countries have that sadly our country does not. Ambassador Ellertsdotter, let's turn to you. What is something you admire about one of your neighbors that you wish Iceland would emulate?
Well, I admire my friends from Norway and Denmark. I mean, I have said sometimes joke. First of all, I want to thank you, Senator, for these kind words about Iceland, which I want to say to also apply to Denmark and Norway. And if I remember correctly, there was some incidents in New York some years back where a Danish mother was arrested because he left her baby outside a coffee house in New York. But that's a different story. But I think it's just telling of the life we have in the Nordic countries. And it's not special for Iceland, but it's special for all our countries. And I think that's what, I mean, we are safe, we are happy. I think our Finnish colleague is somewhere, they have beaten us to the first in the happy index, but you know, we're close behind them. So, but I've sometimes jokingly said to my friends from Norway and Sweden if I could be a seek political asylum there, because I really admire the way they are so prosperous, they are so innovative, and we in Iceland, one of the problems we have, it's not a problem, but it does, as I think is the same case as for Alaska, is that we are few. So there are a lot of things that we do not do that we would want to do. There are a lot of, there are universities, there are issues that we cannot afford because we are a small society. So we admire our Nordic friends, and I want to say that we seek education, further education, a lot in Norway and in Denmark. So that is what I admire about my neighbors.
Let's go to Ambassador Krutnes.
Well, thank you. Yes, we also take our kids outdoor, and they cannot come out in again before they've slept for 2 hours. That's the way it works. I'm supposedly a diplomat, and then being in the US, there will be only one right answer to which country I admire. And I spent a few days in Anchorage this time, and I met a lot of wonderful people. And it strikes me that there is a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship here. I met a few of them working on green tech, and it was an eye-opener to me. So I would say that I admire both the robustness and tough Alaskan attitude, as well as their entrepreneurship.
And I will continue down the line, but I'll ask you all to hold the mics very close. It's you have to really project when you speak in this room. Ambassador
So that's something I admire with the Americans, because we Nordic don't do that.
Guilty as charged. Ambassador Visborg.
Thank you. Just a piece of advice. Does it go? Yeah. Whoa. Just a piece of advice. When you let your baby sleep outside, they do sleep for 2 hours. So there's something to
At least if it's cold.
Yeah, if it's cold. So, now I would just say I refuse to choose a friend among friends. So let me just say I admire the residents of the Arctic. I admire your resilience. I admire the way you face the challenges that you meet with innovation, problem solving, dedication. I admire the friendship we see here at the symposium. I feel like I'm invited to a family party, and it's been wonderful to see so many dedicated people. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Hillman.
So the tricky part about going last is that there's a lot of admiration that's been shared that I too share. And I think that what I would like to say is I admire and I feel very privileged over the last couple of days to have met and spoken to many residents of the Arctic from different nations. And this isn't a privilege that I have had very much in the past, and I feel very honored to have done that. And I think that what I admire about them is not only the Northerners, but specifically our Indigenous people here in the North, with their many, many different cultures and many, many different lifestyles, are coming at this moment in time, not only deeply rooted in their histories and traditions, but with an effort to look in a very optimistic way towards the future, even recognizing all of the challenges that are being faced here in this region. And there's been a lot of discussion around climate change and the changes that will have in the region, about the opportunities for sustainable growth, the sustainable use of resources. I think that those have been very interesting conversations. And of course, challenges around security. But through all of that, what I admire is the energy coming from the northern residents that I've had a chance to talk to. And, oftentimes, I don't know how others feel, but oftentimes I find in our line of work, there are a lot of problems or people present issues in a moment in time in terms of the challenges. We have a challenge with Russian aggression and war and horrific acts. We have a challenge with very serious climate change. We have a challenge with economic opportunities that need to be further exploited. But what I've really admired is all of the people that are coming at that from the opposite direction. I find it energizing, I find it inspiring, and I plan to take it back to Ottawa and Washington.
Thank you. Senator Murkowski, we've heard from all these ambassadors over the last 2 days the moral outrage, the concerns about security that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has brought on to all of the Arctic nations, some of whom share an actual border with Russia. I'd like to hear from you what your thoughts are on a future dialogue. The Arctic Council is on pause right now. Do you see the path forward, a mechanism that the other 7 Arctic nations have a dialogue excluding Russia? Should there be a bar that Russia must meet to resume the conversation? We've heard so much concern about what the pause's ramifications are.
Well, it's an important conversation that we need to have because, well, Putin may continue to pursue this war and these atrocities in Ukraine. The Arctic itself cannot be put on pause. You cannot put on pause the issues of food security. You cannot put on pause the issues related to environment and to climate. You cannot put on pause the efforts that we have made to try to be partners on these issues that confront us on perhaps a daily basis, maybe a seasonal basis. I recall the conversations that we were having just a year ago with wildland fires in the Arctic, an issue that when I first began so much of my Arctic engagement, we were never talking about wildfires in the Arctic, and yet we had seen the Siberian wildfires and all that that meant. You know, what is it that we are doing as an Arctic nation, sharing best practices, working through some of these challenges? So the Arctic doesn't go on pause because Putin has decided that he is going to, again, insert himself in a way and a manner that threatens the sovereignty of a nation like Ukraine. We have got to figure out how we can continue our efforts to work as Arctic nations together without one of the largest geographically Arctic nations. So we have venues. I've been a member of the Arctic Parliamentarian. Aya Larson is here somewhere with us, who is the chair of that Arctic parliamentarians. We too are talking about how we proceed with these initiatives that we have been working on as fellow parliamentarians. Is there a way to convene outside of the formal structure that allows the work to still continue that we have been working towards? And so this is a new place for all of us. But I think we have to remember there's no pause for what we have in place now in the Arctic. You cannot stop it because of a war. We do have to stop. We must stop the engagement with these conversations with Russia. They cannot be allowed to consider that what they are committing somehow or other is going to invite them into a forum like the Arctic Council or the parliamentarians or the Arctic Circle or any of the other number. And so it forces us, you as ambassadors of Arctic nations, me as an Arctic parliamentarian, our secretaries of states, and those at the level of the Council to figure out how we are able to engage. Because the Arctic can't be put on pause because of a war.
Something else that doesn't pause is the priorities don't pause. Also, climate change, climate crisis does not pause. So, Ambassador Ellertsdotter, where do you see the room for cooperation, and where does the push need to come from to ensure that the Arctic nations are continuing their priorities addressing climate change, especially as there is, you know, there is a push for development amid Russia's resources essentially being sort of strangled in the global market?
I actually don't think that we need any push to collaborate, even without Russia. I mean, we do that all the time. I said this earlier today. I mean, we do collaborate, be it, bilaterally, be it trilaterally. I mean, there is not a meeting between our countries without the Arctic being on the agenda. And I think that will continue. And climate change is the same. The Arctic, the climate change is always on the agenda when any of us meet. It doesn't matter in which forum. If the Arctic Council is now frozen or whatever, we need to find ways to deal with that. We discussed this earlier today. I mean, we need to find ways to carry the work forward because we do not know how long this will last. Mm-hmm. I mean, we do not see the end of this, and we do not see what kind of a world order we will have when and if this is over. I mean, all of us are struggling to understand, what this means to all the work we have. I mean, not just in the Arctic, but in general. So I think that we will cooperate. We will find ways to do that because the pressing issues of the Arctic, like the climate crisis, I mean, as you said, we cannot pause that. So absolutely, we will carry on the cooperation.
Ambassador Krutnis, talk to us about what is to keep Russia in check. I mean, if Russia goes rogue on anything from fishing to claiming territory in the north, what do the other Arctic nations do? Where are the boundaries or responsibilities of the other countries to react?
I think the Russia we see today is an aggressive, violent war machine in Ukraine. And I don't... well, actually, what we hope is that it will not have a spillover effect to the Arctic. Right now, this is an issue for NATO. It's an issue for allied countries. And what Putin wanted to achieve, to split the allies, he did not achieve. We have never been stronger together than we are now. We've seen an allied solidarity that I don't think Putin expected. I'm sure he didn't expect that. For the moment, we see that Putin is busy in Ukraine and there's no spillover to the Arctic areas. We hope it stays like that. We will see how far it goes. At one point, of course, you cannot isolate the North Atlantic, the Arctic, from Ukraine, but we will hope it doesn't come that far.
Ambassador Vispor, is this a pivotal moment that we will look back and reflect on? These 25, 26 years of stability of the Arctic Council, the collaborative relationships that many of you have worked tirelessly to create. What are your concerns about the future?
Well, we've always pointed to the Arctic Council as one of the few forums where we could cooperate with the Russians and we could have a sensible dialogue. We have to admit that that's over now. We learned that it was not possible to trust Russians, it was not possible to cooperate with them, and they have attacked Ukraine in the most violent way. And so that's, the hopes we had in that regard, they are gone. And now we have to proceed without them, as it looks now. The best thing I think we can do is to seek unity among the rest of us, and to be united. We have really demonstrated what unity can do, and I think that's something we should really strive to continue. So we should stick together. We should show Putin that this is not the way forward, and he will eventually lose.
Ambassador Hillman.
Just let your applause sink in. I completely agree. I think that what is so remarkable about the last 5-6 weeks now is not only the unity that we've seen, but in fact, the fact that allies are pushing each other forward to take stronger and stronger measures to find new ways, all of the tools that we have, whether they're economic or military support for Ukraine, or political podiums that we are on, or having Russia removed from international conversations and decision-making bodies. All of these things are ratcheting up the pressure. It is, I think, partly because we are seeking to only solidify these partnerships, but let's be honest, it's also because we are all incredibly inspired by the strength and resilience of the Ukrainians. And we need to stand with the Ukrainians because they are all putting their lives on the line every day.
Well, we're running out of time, but we cannot leave the stage without acknowledging that this is a panel of all women ambassadors and a senator. And a recent study by the Harvard Business Review, which I hear is very reputable, found that women leaders are actually more successful. In a time of crisis. In a time of crisis. Now, this looked at 360 surveys. People evaluated their colleagues, their bosses, their reports, and it found that women leaders do well in a crisis. On top of that, I was speaking with one of the conference attendees last night, who's an Inupiaq gentleman, who was telling me about how, in his home community, women have such an important leadership role in saying, this is when it's time to hunt. The ice is safe now. So I'd like to hear from you how women leadership, female leadership right now, can you save us? Can you? How can female leadership be a model right now for us as we look to this, this fragile ecosystem, and also this war that is tearing apart Europe right now? Senator Murkowski?
Well, thank you for the question, because it is something where we've asked the question. I was in an all-member briefing just days before Putin invaded Ukraine. And we heard from the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State and the head of the DNI intelligence agency and the head of Homeland, and it was a pretty heavy discussion and briefing. And understandably, one of the questions from one of the members was, if this happens, if Putin does this, how does this end? It's the question that we all ask. And it came from the Secretary of Defense. Secretary Austin said, it will be when the mothers of Russia rise up and say, enough. I have lost my husband, I have lost my son, I have lost my brother, enough. And I've thought about those words because I thought, okay, but then I worry because we know that those mothers in Russia are not necessarily receiving the same news that we are. They're not hearing the same stories. But what they are realizing, you cannot omit the fact that their sons are not returning, their husbands are not returning. But I think the other area of empowerment that is giving inspiration to everyone in Ukraine and everyone around the world is how the Ukrainian women are engaging. They're saying, I'm staying. I'm going to be there to help with the support. I'm going to be there to fight if I need to. Or I'm going to be the grandmother who will take the children to safety so that you can stay in fight. I think we're seeing women standing up and speaking out and saying, enough. Enough of the atrocity, enough of the killing, enough. And I think it will be the women of Russia and the women of Ukraine who will get us to an end to these atrocities.
Ambassador Hellman.
Well, I think it's hard to add to that. I think that I too struggle with the challenges that we face in getting information into Russia. I do think that the end will come through that information getting into Russia in a way where those people can start to understand what this is, because of course this isn't about the Russian people. This is about Putin. I think that women's leadership is very important. I believe that women's leadership is very important in conjunction with men's leadership. I think that women's leadership is very important in conjunction with leadership from diverse, parts of our society. I actually think this goes to what the senator was saying earlier. I think that leadership is actually about people who are able to make decisions listening to other people who are coming at an issue from a different perspective. And so getting out of the Russia crisis, I don't know, but there's going to have to be some communication there in order for things to be resolved.
And Ambassador Visbor, we can take the lesson of women leadership, though, and apply it to the Arctic, apply it to the dialogues that you've been a part of this week.
Yes, I think both women leadership and male leadership, they are both super important, and we need all the best leaders we can find. I would just limit it to a very short sentence. I think it's just incredible what you can achieve if you don't need to take credit for it all the time. So that's why I go with.
Now, I'm struggling a bit with the question about female leadership, because I think leadership is a very individual thing for both men and women. And I noticed a panel earlier today with only men, and they were not asked about male leadership. So this is, we're still not there, because this is a question that is being asked to us and not to the men. So the time when we don't get that question, that's when we've reached where we want to be. And since everybody here has been talking, also twisted this question to Ukraine, I would say that I think we see the best leadership we've seen in decades from the Ukrainian president. That is true leadership.
Ambassador Ellertsdotter.
This is the worst part, to be the last. No, I do agree with my colleagues saying that, we should be past the question of women or men leaders, and we should, when we have achieved full equality, this is a question, nobody cares if there are 5 men and 5 women or a full women panel or whatever, but we are still not there. Even if we're lucky enough tonight to be a full female panel. And if I'm not mistaken, I think all 4 of us are the first female ambassadors to Washington.
Really?
Yeah, exactly. So, but all of our countries at the same time do pride themselves of being very gender equal. So, something needs to be done. So I just want to say that I think both men and women are needed in leadership. And what I have learned most here today is also the incredible resilience, the stories, and the experience of the indigenous people. And so it's not just about men and women, it's about inclusiveness in general, and it goes for, all of us. So I think that is the most important thing.
Well, thank you so much to all of you. Thank you for making the journey. Let me go down the line. Thank you so much, Senator Murkowski, Senator Hillman. I've got to get my order correct. Senator Visborg, Senator Krutnes, and Senator Ellertsdotter. Thank you so much to all of you. And we will trade all of you for one Senator Joe Manchin. Senator Murkowski, you're going to stay here, and we'll bring Senator Manchin up. Thank you so much to all of you.
me?
Not yet.
Go, go, go.
I really
I can
gotta
handle this. How you doing?
Okay, so before Libby gets started, I said, "How you doing?" He says, "I'm fine." I said, "I'm starving." He's like, "Well, I can handle this. You go eat." So, but we're going to stay with you.
Well, you two are a bit of a duo. So welcome, Senator Manchin. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Alaska. So let's start there with this bipartisanship that you are forging.
No,
Politico-
it's matured. We're not forging it.
You're not.
It's matured.
Politico called you the last of a dying breed. So talk to us about the role right now for bipartisanship and this question about how we work across ideologies, how we work across parties is so relevant right now as we look at all the cross-cultural collaboration and conversation we've seen this week at this symposium. How do you two deal with the fact that you are such a rare breed right now in Washington, D.C.?
Let me just set the stage for all of you. We go to work every day in a hostile environment, working environment. Picture this. If you went to work every day in your business, wherever you go, wherever your workplace may be, and there was another fellow worker trying to get you fired every day you went to work, how would you react? Where I come from, they kick the living crap out of you. So we go every day, and I'm expected, because I have a D by my name, and she has an R by her name, that we're supposed to be against each other when either one of us are running for election. If she has somebody running right now, it could be Donald Duck with a D by their name, and I'm supposed to give them a check to defeat her and come to Alaska to campaign against her, and vice versa. That's what's expected, and we don't do that, and we're just not going to do it. So it used to be an unwritten rule. When Ted Stevens and Dan Inouye and Bob Byrd and all them never acted, that was just basically an unwritten rule. But it's gotten so hostile now, the toxic atmosphere. It's got to change. And here I am. I'm endorsing her 1,000%. I hope all of you are helping her. And we hope you help her with mother's milk. Yeah. Anyway, let me just say this. Let me just say this, and I mean this. She is my partner. She is my partner in the Senate. And when it's something that has to be done, we've done the infrastructure bill together. She brings $1.2 billion back to Alaska of what she did. So we know how it works. And basically, when everything gets stopped in Washington, then it's basically the bipartisan group that has to come together. It used to be
I'm sorry, I have to tell. First of all, I've been instructed, keep the microphones up and close, because everyone wants to hear you, even folks back there. The bipartisan group, I mean, how many of you are there now? How is the meeting of two going? I mean, there's so...
No, you have to grow it. It has to start with just a couple. Because if it doesn't start with a couple...
I'm just picturing the two of you, I know you know, on the senator's
We don't
row
need
with your
anybody else.
spouses.
We're okay.
You're like, you barely have a bridge team.
But look at it. Look what happened. Look at what happened with the Arctic oil embargo. Okay? We're at the State of the Union. I'm talking to Joe. We're all standing up waiting for the president to come in and give his speech. And he's like, you know, it's crazy. It's crazy that the United States is accepting a single drop of oil, much less natural gas or coal, from Russia. We got to stop this. And Joe says, let's do it. And I said, okay. And we said, let's make it happen. And we have some pretty good staff who are able to write something. And within 24 to maybe 48 hours, we had 24 members. But somebody has to start it. Somebody needs to say, hey, it's safe out here. Come together. We do a lot in the Senate. This is kind of weird, but it's kind of like the Noah's Ark deal. We come 2 by 2. It's safety in numbers, but somebody has to start it. And Joe and I think, have just said, it's kind of the what the hell moments. Somebody's got to start the conversation, and you bring people into it. But if you just kind of sit back and say somebody else is going to do it, nobody's going to do it. And bipartisanship wouldn't exist. I'm telling you.
So, Senator, earlier today, the two of you had a press conference and you said that you would back Senator Murkowski on something like the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. You would not support, as many Democrats would do, restoring protections. And you talked about the importance right now in your mind of domestic production of energy. So I think we're all clear on your record there. I want to hear you talk about climate change because you are here in the Arctic, and the Arctic is warming at 3 or 4 times the rate of the rest of the globe. At what point does the cost of relocating villages, doing mitigation, everything that will have to happen here in Alaska, as well as other parts of the country, at what point does that cost exceed the money that comes from oil and gas?
Well, if you believe the United States of America is at fault with all the things you're talking about, that it's our fault, let me give you an example of what's going on around the world. It's called global climate. It's not called Alaska climate. It's not called West Virginia climate or North American climate. This is global climate. And if you would, the hardcore, my friends on the environmental end, and we have this discussion all the time, they make you think that all the coal-fired power plants, we only have 500 left in America. 500 coal-fired plants. But if you talk to some of my friends, they make you believe those 500 plants are destroying the whole world. Do you understand? China has 3,000 coal-fired plants. They're building 400 more as we speak. They're not taking their foot's not off the throttle at all. And the bottom line is that 90% of all pollution will come from one continent in 10 years, Asia. So we've got to find and unlock the technology. And ours comes from basically finding out what type of technology, how do we have carbon capture, sequestration, utilization, how do we basically move the information and the technology forward, whether it's going to be wind, solar, hydropower, whether it's going to be geothermal, all of the things that we're all for. But it's an energy policy that basically it's all in. So I'm all for all of the above, but I can tell you this, I will not vote for anything that takes the United States of America out of being energy independent. You do that, we'll end up like Europe. Can't do it. And the bottom line is we do it cleaner. So anything that we replace right now from Russia, when there were people in the administration talking about, well, let's talk to Venezuela and Iran. I said, have you lost your completely freaking mind? Are you all stupid? What happened? We're not. That's the dirtiest fuel in the world. Why not come to us? Did you have anybody calling up in Alaska say, hey, can you produce more? No. Anybody call in America say, can you produce more? No. We're looking around the world. They're not going to come to the plate. UAE and Saudis have shut us down completely. They're not going anywhere. We've got to do it. So we're trying to form, working together, trying to form a North American Energy Alliance. It should be Canada, United States, and Mexico. Basically could be the energy capital of the world.
So I want to turn this question to you, Senator, about this cost. But first, Senator Manchin, it's just us here in Alaska. You can make some news here tonight about what you would support in a bill that would address the climate crisis. With this combination, your all of the above energy, which you've talked about forever, really. Is there a path forward to get legislation passed on climate change?
Oh, there's always a path forward, and basically just don't sweet talk me. I've been around a while. Don't tell me you're for all this and you basically can't build a pipeline, can't move the product, can't get regulations to where I can build anything, can't get Defense Production Act to where I can basically fast track things. Tell me all the things you want, but you can't show me anything that you're doing responsibly that allows us to produce what we need. The world is looking to us right now. Europe is in a heck of a mess. If we don't start backfilling with LNG, if we don't start backfilling with diesel fuel, if we don't start doing what we do better than anyone in the world, Europe is screwed. They're screwed royally. They're not going to make it. Next year, we're going to see basically if we don't backfill all the energy they need right now, next winter is going to be horrific in Europe. And if we don't do something immediately, the famine that will go on in Africa right now could be horrible coming into the fall. We're seeing all of this. They're looking to the United States of America for leadership.
But there's the question of the tandem nature of this, right? Can you get things that you want, concessions that you want for development, especially given what's happened with Russia and the supplies? and also move forward, so we're not just thinking about the dire needs of people in 6 months, but we're thinking about this place in 20 years or 40 years or 50 years.
I'm not looking for concessions. Just deal with reality.
And what is that reality? Senator Murkowski, let me turn to you about this question of
let
the cost.
Let me just help
Sure,
with this, because you've asked a question. How can it be done?
Yeah. Yes, please.
I
How
can
can it be
tell
done?
you how it can't be done. How it can't be done is when one party says the only way that it's going to happen is if every Democrat lines up and we're going to make you walk the plank. This is going to be the legislation it's going to be reconciliation. You do not need to work to try to find a broader level of support and compromise. That's the way to fail with a policy. Because even if they were able to get all 50 Democrats, and I think Senator Manchin has been pretty clear in terms of where he would go and where he would not go, and if it's not in the common sense column, he's not going there. But even if they could get all 50 of them, don't you think that when the Senate flips again, and it could be very well this next go-around, I'd like to think that that happens, but I still like him as chairman. He's doing okay. But it would be good for us to be in the other speech. But don't you think that we're going to do everything that we can do to unflip that, which we just did? What kind of certainty does that give to any investor? What kind of certainty does that mean then when we're talking about policy? When we're talking about climate, you cannot have kind of this schizophrenic back and forth whipsaw. We go from administration to administration. We are going to be further behind than when we started. We have to have a policy that is a bipartisan path forward. And that's what we're talking about here. Is it going to be something that we can flip the switch tomorrow? No, it's going to take some work. But that's what we said with the infrastructure bill. They said that we couldn't pass that either. They said that we couldn't provide a framework for COVID relief because we'd already done that. What a bipartisan group who's committed to getting to yes and working together to try to advance something that's good for the country instead of good for the party. What we can do, that's the future. That's the direction.
I just
want to say one thing.
Yeah.
Lisa promised me I'd see the Northern Lights if I came to Alaska. Thank you so much.
There you go. Senator Murkowski, you have been in the Senate long enough to remember a time when the committees did the work.
They worked.
And this is something that the late Representative Don Young was singularly focused on, getting the work done in the committee. And he would talk about, going to the chairman's office, cracking open the bottle of something, and across party lines, working out a solution and hashing it out in committee so that when it then went to the floor, it had already, the hard work had already been done, the lift had already been done by the committees, not the leadership and the parties. Do you see a path forward to getting back to that place where
we
work
did
can
it.
be done?
We did it. I mean, this is how we got the Energy Act of 2020. We got energy reform for the first time in a dozen years, and we did it when I was chairman of the committee, and this guy was the ranking member. And we did exactly that. We said, we got some pitfalls coming at us here. You're going to have to work this on your side. I'm going to have to work this on your side, on our side. But we're going to figure this out. We worked it together. We didn't take just all Republican ideas. We knew we had to figure out how we were going to get some Democrats to come along with us. And we worked together to craft something that not only passed, but passed with like 70+ votes. We did that with the Energy Act. We did that with the infrastructure bill, but we did that outside of the committee. Why did we do that outside of the committee? Because the committee had started to break down. But it takes that kind of leadership. It also takes a little bit of compromise. In fairness, I didn't get everything that I wanted in that bill. And you know what? He didn't either. But we got 80%, which was 100% more than we had before we were able to pass the Energy Act. And so the committees can work, but it takes leadership from the committee chairman and the ranking member to set the example. And that's what we did when I was chairman, and that's what he is doing when he is chairman, is setting that example as to how you lead to work together.
I still want to circle back to this question, Senator Murkowski, of the ultimate cost of what climate change will reap here in Alaska, as well as in other parts of this country. How do you look to the future and see that and think about the long-term strategic planning?
Well, the future is one where we recognize we have to act. So how do you act? How do you address climate change? You just can't will it away. You just can't say, I hope that tomorrow is not going to deliver us high waves that are eating away at the shore. It's the technologies that are going to get us there. And there's no free technologies out there. What we're doing to help fund our national labs, what we're doing with public-private partnerships, what we're doing to really help incent the investors to make the investments that we need them to do, it doesn't come free. Your government is not funding all of that. What we need to do, to use his words, we need to innovate, not eliminate. And in order to innovate, we've got to be strong enough economically in order to do that. And so we can't put in place policies that are going to inhibit our economic growth. We can't put in place policies that are effectively going to say, you keep it in the ground and you figure something out later on. It is how we work to do a transition. And think about the word transition. It doesn't mean we flip a switch tomorrow. It means that there's a dimmer out there, and how this dimmer switch works and how fast we're able to accelerate it depends on us and our ability to try to be working together to try to put in place some policies that give some level of predictability, which is hugely important, but we also have to have a strong enough economy to do it. It's going to be the technology that gets us there, and we have to respect that it cannot be done overnight. And at the same time that we're working towards the energy security of the future, we've got to be thinking about where we are, the place that we are in right now as a nation. Because energy security is translating into national security. And we need to think about that nexus. We need to think about how that works and how that's adjusting that dimmer switch. Because right now, there is an extraordinary vulnerability amongst our friends and allies, who, again, to Senator Manchin's point, they're wondering, how can the United States help us? We don't have the same assets that the United States has. So please help us, because we have nowhere to turn right now except Russia, except Iran, except Venezuela. That is not a sustainable future for our climate or for really the geopolitical world.
Senator Manchin, how do we help West Virginians learn about the Arctic? And how do we help lower 48 Americans see the U.S. as an Arctic nation and understand the priorities that may matter up here that may not be on the radar of people where you are from?
Well, let me just say that Lisa B., my dear friend, about 4 years ago, she says, we're going to take a trip, Joe, to the Arctic. And we did that. We did a CODEL and brought the senators with us, and we did the whole swing around the Arctic. And I've said this today. I was talking to people, and I said, the United States is the only country that allows the climate issue to be a divide, political divide. The other Arctic nations understand it's for real. They got to do something. And it is not a political divide. We use it as a political divide because we have a very toxic atmosphere. That's what we have to change and come to reality. But the bottom line, we're all in this. Lisa's been giving you some examples of what we have to do. Technology is what's going to change, and it will change it. The United States of America, whatever we do it better than most any nation on earth. And we can do a lot more. And then there's going to be a situation where there's going to be other countries that want to come into our market, into our marketplaces, and sell us products into the strongest market in the world. And they're not going to be able to get in if they're not using the technology that we've developed. And I've said this, you take us out of the fossil world, you take us out of coal, oil, natural gas, all the fossil that's basically given us the horsepower to run our country, which is what the world's running on. And as we transition into a cleaner technology with all the renewables and the things we've talked about, you take us out of that and the climate will go to crap in a heartbeat, because no one else will spend the money we will for research and development it's going to take to get us that next level. That's the difference. So when people keep telling you, oh, you got to quit this, you got to quit using this, the bottom line is Germany tried it. How well did it work for Germany?
I mean, I have to say the latest IPCC report from the UN says we're at the threshold. We're at the stopping.
Who is? The United States or the world?
No, the globe. The
Thank
globe.
you.
So how do
Make sure they talk about globe and not United States.
So what is the role to be a leader in that? Because what the IPCC is calling for is a reduction in coal.
Let me ask you, well, okay, we've reduced. We went from 680, almost 700 coal-fired plants 10 years ago to less than 500. China went from 1,700 to 3,000. Tell me how they're going to follow. Tell me how they're going to follow.
Oh, I've said
I can tell you how they're going to follow.
Yeah.
Basically, if we basically have the technology and showing that this is the way, if you're going to use coal, this is how you use it. Carbon capture, utilization. If you're going to use oil, if you're going to use natural gas. If you're going to go to hydrogen, are you going to go to blue hydrogen or green hydrogen? Which way are you going to go? And when you do it, and we show it can be done, if you don't do it, you're not going to come into our markets unless you pay one heck of a price to get in. Follow the money. Just follow the money, gang. It'll take you where you need to go.
On a final note, Senator Murkowski, any advice for your colleague and friend about being up here in Alaska? I am pleased to report it's much safer up here than Washington, where there was a rabid fox attacking people on the Capitol grounds this past week. So wildlife here, much less dangerous than the rabid foxes and sometimes politicians in Washington. When you bring senators like your friend up, what do you want to show them about Alaska? What do you want them to take away?
Well, first of all, I actually saw the rabid fox. I thought it was a cat.
I mean, you should have tracked
I
it or
saw
something.
him. I was walking. I was checking up on my emails, and I see this out of the corner of my eye, and I know what a fox looks like, and I'm like, that's a red fox in the Capitol. But he was scooting over the other way, and I'm not fool enough to go try and say, here, kitty, kitty. So I was fine. I did not get attacked by the rabid fox. But you're asking me, what I want Senator Manchin to see. I find out he does a true confessional to me. He says that every night he goes to sleep, before he goes to sleep, he watches one of the Alaska reality TV shows.
Honest to God, true.
Every night. So I don't think I can share anything new with him that he hasn't seen on Alaska reality TV shows.
I got to tell you something. Hold on.
This is crazy.
I got to tell you something.
I never watched those things.
I fell in love with Alaska in 2010, and I'm going to tell you how. I fell in love in 2010, and I'm thinking, these Alaskans got to be the smartest people that I know in the whole country. And they have to be the most literate people. If they can spell Murkowski and get her elected in a write-in election, they've got to be the best.
My friend Joe Manchin.
Well, thank you so much to both of you. Don't pet
we
the
like
wildlife.
each other, can you?
Yeah, don't pet the wildlife here, Senator. Keep him from trying to get too close with the pictures. And thanks so much to both of you, and thank you for your time. I know it's been a busy week for you in Washington. Thank you so much, Senators. Thank you.